New space race. Who will be the first to reach Mars? The first person to walk on the moon's surface was Neil Armstrong in 1969. Since then, a total of 12 individuals have done so, and new missions are already being planned to send the next generation of humans to the moon. But, despite Mars being the closest to Earth in the solar system, we have yet to successfully transport people there. And who will be the first person to walk on the red planet's surface? Watch the entire video to find out. The first space race. The former Soviet Union and the United States engaged in a technological duel in the 1950s in an effort to establish which country had made the biggest strides in technology. This occurred after the Second World War, when the world was still frightened of an impending Third War and the wounds from previous conflicts had not yet completely healed. Each country made a significant financial investment in the creation of weaponry and technologies that would be useful in a war in order to uphold the patriotic ideal in society and to provide people a sense of security. With previously unheard of budgets, the US and the Soviet Union were able to create superior aircraft, submarines, destructive weapons, and perhaps most importantly, spaceships. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched the first artificial satellite, Sputnik 1, into orbit, ushering in a technological revolution with a machine that could quickly circle the globe and land anywhere on the planet. This sparked concern in the United States, which rapidly started to create its own artificial satellites and rockets. President John F. Kennedy stated in front of a large crowd in 1957 that in only 10 years, American technology will send a person to the moon and return him back safely. This is what we know as the space race, and as we know today, the US was the one who succeeded in putting a man on the moon's surface. The Soviet Union saw this as a challenge to prove who would be the first of the two to perform such a feat. Obviously, this does not imply that the US won the race. In fact, the Soviet Union had many equally significant accomplishments, like being the first country to put a person into orbit, send a person into space, and conduct the first spacewalk, among many other things. Due to the contributions of both countries in the fight for technological supremacy, we now have hundreds of products that would not be feasible without the achievements of that competition. The new space race. The space race during those years was mostly driven by political goals because countries did not want to lag behind in anything that could be used as a weapon, unlike now. Even if there are still wars, it can be argued that the globe is currently experiencing a period of peace. There is no imminent threat of a third world war, and countries are developing at progressively more equal rates. Private space agencies, which did not exist 50 years ago, have arisen as new actors in the aerospace industry as a result of technological advancements and high levels of income. These organizations have invested in the technology and funding necessary to complete space missions that, decades before, could only be accomplished by governments with significant resources. The current space race is not about seeing who goes to the moon first, but who gets to Mars first. New corporate space agencies and government agencies have a new objective in their sights, and that goal is to go as far as it has never gone before. Why Mars? Venus, not Mars, is the planet that is nearest to Earth. Therefore, since Venus is closest to Earth, why not travel there? It's fairly easy to understand why. Venus itself is hell and is the hottest planet of all because its atmosphere creates a greenhouse effect that prevents the heat from the planet from escaping, causing sulfuric acid to rain on Venus instead of water and rivers of lava to flow there in place of rivers of water. In contrast to Mars, which has cold temperatures that are manageable, Venus has temperatures that exceed 400 degrees Celsius, at which point some metals start to melt. In conclusion, Venus is the worst possible destination for humans, making Mars the next option. In Mars, the force of gravity would be a third of Earth's, meaning that if you weighed 60 kilograms on Earth, and you would only weigh 20 kilograms on Mars. This planet shares many characteristics in common with Earth. The surface of Mars is also quite comparable to a desert, with dust and boulders, according to research from exploration probes that have been sent there. Days on Mars also last 23 hours, which is extremely similar to our own planet. Mars is the only planet where we could dwell, at least inside capsules with an Earth-like housing, despite the fact that not enough water deposits have yet been discovered and that it lacks a magnetic field to shield us from solar radiation. When will the first humans set foot on Mars? Who will become history's first visitor to the Martian surface and join Neil Armstrong in doing so in 1969? The truth is that we do not yet know. Although there are now a large number of astronauts who fit this profile, the fundamental issue is that we do not yet know when the first journey to the Red Planet will take place. Several scientists who are professionals in the field disagree with some optimistic entrepreneurs, like Elon Musk, who have claimed that we would be able to send the first fleet of humans to the Red Planet in less than 10 years thanks to their technology. No matter how much technology a space agency, public or private, possess, a trip to Mars is not like a mission to the moon. Whereas lunar trips only required a few days, a voyage to Mars would require months. Mars is 59 million kilometers from Earth, which is 153 times farther than the Moon, which is 384,000 kilometers away. Until date, no spacecraft has been developed to support such a long journey with a crew of humans. The only space organization that has successfully sent people to the Moon is NASA, which also has the most experience in this area. But even NASA does not dare to predict when the first people will arrive on Mars because they are aware that it will not be a simple task to complete. In contrast to trips to the Moon, trips to Mars can take months or even years. It is estimated that by taking advantage of the gaps in approach between the Earth and Mars every 26 months, the fastest spacecraft we have could reach the Red Planet in a record time of 7 months. The most significant of these challenges is time. Trips to the Moon can be made in a few days, but trips to Mars can take months or even years. There are still another 8 months to travel and 7 months to return to Earth. At least 15 months were spent on the journey overall, including about 450 days in weightless space. Astronaut Vandy Hay, who spent 355 days aboard the International Space Station, has so far logged the longest stay in space. Vandy Hay had lost a significant amount of muscular mass and had had decalcification in his bones upon his return to the land. It took him nearly 2 years to fully regain his physical condition. Similar or even more harsh conditions will be encountered by astronauts traveling to Mars. In that event, anyone other than those most likely to survive such a protracted and grueling mission could not be sent. The knowledge component is the last one. Up until now, only NASA has dealt with astronauts on the surface of a planet other than Earth. It is almost impossible for a commercial space organization to provide an exact date if a seasoned space agency like NASA hasn't been able to predict when they will send the first person to Mars. Very simply, when will we arrive on Mars? The simplest and most precise response is that it is currently unknown. It is a bit hazardous to predict that it will happen in less than 10 years, but it is impossible to predict the state of technology at that time. Perhaps by then, we will already have a more precise date, but for the time being, we are unsure. Who will arrive first? Imagine that it has been 10 years and that we have the means to launch the first human mission to Mars. Will it be a for-profit company like SpaceX or a government organization like NASA? The answer is neither, really. If history has taught us anything, it is that extraordinary events rarely repeat themselves exactly. Just the most powerful country visited the Moon when people first stepped foot there. Only males carried, and they were all Caucasians. Since then, a lot has changed. Today, countries are no longer at war with one another and trade with one another in a vast global economy where the decisions of one country affect all others. The largest nuclear fusion reactor, known as ITER, International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, located in France, is an example of how the most ambitious projects of humanity are increasingly being focused on by an international participation. ITER aims to produce clean energy by replicating the processes that take place inside the Sun. The International Space Station, the most expensive and impressive building in human history, and a laboratory the size of a soccer field orbiting the Earth and moving at more than 25 kilometers per hour, serves as another example of this. Although it was initially built by the United States, many nations from all over the world worked together to make it what it is today. International cooperation has accomplished what a single country is unable to do, and it is obvious that when the efforts of all those who have the potential to achieve something are combined, those chances significantly increase. Today, this is reflected in all facets of our lives, and the global landscape embraces this model of win-win cooperation. It's feasible that in the not-too-distant future this could turn into a trend of advancement, and that the mission in charge of sending the following generation of humanity to Mars would involve not just one nation but also every other nation on Earth and every space agency that exists. By doing this, we may combine the best qualities of each person to create the ship that will carry mankind to its first ever landing on a planet other than the one where we were born. As we closely follow them on their journey to the stars, accompanying them as they travel to places no one has gone before, on a planet that may one day become our new home.